Warning. This show features dark subjects which may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Chaos Jar. I'm the loud and obnoxious one, J. West Secord. Hey. With me is the host and the big bag of facts, Bad Ben.
Hey.
And as always, we have someone else with us. This person is not giving me a name yet.
Sup.
Welcome, Sup, to the show. So, as usual, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. Follow us on Facebook at Chaos Jar Podcast. I had a little brain fart there, which is also the name of our YouTube channel. If your friends aren't good with the podcast thingamadoogles, send them to YouTube and listen to us there. Plus, you can follow me on Twitter at I'm Glad You Asked _ where you ask me questions, I answer them, and no one's asked me questions, so I'm lonely.
Don't forget the Patreon.
It's like the Patreon. Very lonely.
Yeah. And lastly, you could also become a patron at patreon.com/chaosjar. Give us a little bit of money, and you'll get early access to our bonus episodes, The Overflow. Plus,
Whoa, what a great deal. No,
yeah,
it's not what we do?
Wait, there's more. If you go there right now, you can listen to the episodes that are already out. Whoa! What a steal!
I love that he's throwing you off.
He is! I'm getting thrown off quite a bit. Keep doing it. All of that in the show notes and more. Now, Ben.
Yeah.
Tell me and Sup what's going in the jar today.
We're talking about the Picton family.
Oh, I've been there. They're the family that disappeared, right?
No.
Who am I thinking?
Oh, is that the family on the corner of Elm Street? You know, the ones that make those cookies on Halloween? I hate those people.
I don't think they've ever lived on Elm Street. I'm not very fond of these people either, though.
Did they live in Picton?
No.
Well, then, what fucking good is this name?
It's their name.
I'm pretty sure you need to live where your name is. My last name is Canada Town. J. West Canada Town.
J. West Secord, Canada Town, USA, Middle Dakota.
Well, if you add all that stuff, like, throw in my postal code. My zip code. Let the audience find me.
Along with the title Esquire.
Esquire MD.
Esquire MD.
That's why they call it a legal clinic.
Dr. J. West Secord.
Legally not a doctor. Legally not a doctor.
Legally not a doctor. Also legally not a lawyer. Okay, so we're talking about where this kind of takes place in the Vancouver area of British Columbia, because, you know, we in Canada Town really know a lot about Canadian history and geography.
Yeah, well, it's taught in our schools.
Yeah.
And, you know, like all the posters of that Russian president, because for whatever reason, Canadians are obsessed with Putin.
Okay.
That is a bad joke right there. Just a bad joke. I'm not going to skip over that.
Sagar, please add something for that.
I tell you not to, but you're just going to add something anyway, so yeah. I'm not worried.
This episode is too damn long already. I'm not adding more jokes.
That solder episode when he added you repeating your blunder was amazing. with the fucking electronic dance music behind it. It was just epic.
Thank you for the kind words, though, Ben.
He always plays me the clips of where he's edited just before I start, because he's always so proud, like a child giving the crayon drawing to his parent.
I love that you just called him a child.
And
Eat a dick.
Okay, so Vancouver. Vancouver is the biggest city in Western Canada. It's a lot bigger than Calgary or Edmonton. And it's only beat in population by Toronto and Montreal. So it's like the third largest metropolitan area in Canada.
It's not the biggest. It's third biggest.
I said third.
I said the third biggest behind Toronto and Montreal, but it's the biggest.
Yeah, but at the beginning you said biggest.
Biggest city in Western Canada.
Okay, fair enough. I wasn't paying attention.
This is who you asked to be on the show. I told you we could have just did it, you and me.
Yeah. But it's so much more fun this way. He threw you off.
Yeah, but shut up.
So there's over 2.5 million people living in the area today, and on the outskirts of Vancouver, it's a lot more of the population. Like 2 million people live on the outskirts, while about 650,000 people live in Vancouver, the city itself.
I saw your gears turning. Were you did you memorize the number?
A little bit.
Were you just doing the math? Carry the 2.
Yeah. Divide by 4.
Yeah.
So it lies just north of the U.S. state of Washington. Vancouver's only 140 miles from Seattle. It's 30 miles from the U.S. border. And the little town of Blaine, Washington sits on the other side of the U.S. border.
Blaine, Washington is George Washington's little brother. He didn't get much recognition. A lot like
he tried his best, okay?
He tried his best. I love it. So, lying north. In 1792, Captain George Vancouver, who was a British officer for the Royal Navy, surveyed the area, and that's who the place was named for.
George Vancouver.
George Vancouver. I know.
That sounds like one of the most hilarious fucking Canadian names that they make up in American sitcoms. Where it's like, oh, have you met John Vancouver?
This is Jimmy Toronto.
Yeah.
Don't ask him about things.
Jean Putin.
Jean Putin. From talking to Americans. He wrote in his journal, to describe the beauties of this region will, on some future occasion, be a grateful task to the pen of a skilled panegyrist. The serenity of the climate, the innumerable pleasing landscapes, the abundant fertility that unassisted nature puts forth, requires only to be enriched by the industry of man with villages, mansions, cottages, and other buildings. A panegyrist is someone who writes formal and elaborate praise. I actually had to look that up because I did not know what it meant.
That is a great job.
Yeah.
Hey, great hair today.
Yeah. Thanks.
Here's a formal letter explaining why I like your hair and why I think you used the right conditioner.
Yeah, formal letter. Did you notarize it yourself?
Shit.
So, before Europeans and white Canadians arrived in the area, it was mostly home to the coastal Salish people. So we talked about the Salish people in the Bigfoot episode. So a trading post was set up in Fort Langley, and it was set up by the Hudson Bay Company in 1827. And it was mostly set up because it's right near the mouth of the Fraser River. There was not a lot of movement to the area until about the late 1850s, though, when miners coming from California flooded into the region looking for gold during what was called the Fraser Canyon Gold Rush, and then the Caribou Gold Rush. The Fraser Canyon one happened in 1858, and then the Caribou Gold Rush happened in 1861. So literally for like a solid 5-year stretch, people were just coming here because like, we heard there was gold.
I'm more curious of what a caribou is, because my entire childhood is surrounded by the idea of what the fuck a caribou is.
The caribou.
Yeah.
What?
The caribou.
Yeah.
The caribou.
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, no, the caribou is like a type of elk. So
I was just about to say that. I mean, I was just looking at the Wikipedia page.
Honestly.
I'm the big bag of facts.
Yeah, we're not listening to Wikipedia, we're listening to Benzopedia.
Benzopedia. That sounds really bad. It sounds like I'm into something very, very terrible.
Sounds like a bad disease,
Have
really.
you listened to our show?
This is true. It does sound like a bad disease.
Benzonitis.
It hurts when I pee. Benzonitis.
Yeah, benzonitis.
My first thought when you said it hurts when I pee is there's Ben with a pin just poking at your penis.
I can't seem to go pee. Every time I do, I get this sharp pain.
And it's like, they can't figure it out, but it's just so obvious you're there.
So the Port of Vancouver was the perfect place for like all the settlers who were coming in for the gold strikes to just kind of set up their supply shops, and it was great for the industry in the area because those miners are going to need things to settle down with, and they're going to need houses built. They're going to need all this stuff. So of course companies move in to try and capitalize on that. But the 1930s.
I'm
just picturing some store owner just like going, miners are here. Hike up the prices. Hike up the...
That's basically what happens here every time the students show up.
Yeah.
The students have arrived.
The students are here. Now everything goes from half price to 200% markup.
So that way when they use their discount, it's half price.
Yeah.
And everybody else pays full.
Yeah, that chocolate bar is $200.
Yeah.
What the hell is made of this?
What a deal. So, so with the continued growth of the industry from the mining, timber became a really big thing in the industry. Like it became a very big industry in the area as well. And
I know. Pitbull made a song about it.
Wow. Wow.
Your face is like simultaneously hurt while processing. It's amazing.
It's funny because I was like, at first I was going to argue that Pitbull's not in that song, but he is in that song.
It's his song.
It just has Kesha inside of it, and that's the one that you hear the most.
I know. Well, he has the rap solo. She just says the chorus.
Yeah, rap.
Hey, just because he's Puerto Rico or whatever doesn't mean he can't rap. That being said, I'm not a fan.
Look, we're not going to bash mouth the musical genius that is Pitbull, okay? I will be damned if I stand around while you bash a beloved artist on this podcast.
I know, you're just going to sit there.
As mining declined, it became more about processing trees and so on. And
I lost track of the plot there for a second. just come back. So then they're processing trees.
We're from talking about Pitbull to
sorry. Let's go back a little bit. I feel like the audience might have got lost too.
So mining declined by the 1950s, and around that time, timber was really taking off. So they ended up having to bigger timber industry that kept fueling the economy even while mining was gone. Because I'm sure that eventually, after all this gold rushing, they were eventually like, there's no more gold here.
Yeah.
Let's move more north.
Yeah, let's keep going. I heard there's some gold in Alaska. Why don't we just keep going further and further north and getting colder and colder? Shut up, Jimmy. I'll send
Shut up, Jimmy. The earth is flat.
Yeah.
We haven't learned about poles yet.
Yeah. So,
Why is Santa up here?
yeah. Who's the guy in the red suit?
And his little...
Thank God there's deer.
Followed by a bunch of caribou. Caribou, there's gold down there.
That was a very good full circle. Wow.
That hit me just as hard.
We haven't even gotten to the...
I know, we haven't gotten to the absurdity of this actual thing. That was great.
We're just reading off British Columbia's travel facts.
Could do a whole podcast just on that.
Please visit British Columbia.
Oh my God.
Not a sponsor.
Yeah, it's not sponsored by Vancouver's travel industry.
God, I wish.
So Vancouver became Canada's main business hub for trade with Asia and the Pacific during that time. And it was a really diverse city because a lot of their labor was done by people who had come in from China.
I was just about to ask about that because they're so close to Asia and various countries there. I assume they have a high Asian population.
Yeah. And at one point they were bringing them in to try and help build the railroad, like the railroad that goes across Canada.
Yeah, Trans Canada.
Yeah, the Trans Canada Railway. And to get through the mountains, there's actually a very interesting story about that. They used to give them the dynamite, send them into the hole, and get them to light the fuse, and then run as fast as they can on the way back.
Oh my God.
And all I could imagine was, you're going through mountains like this, so eventually, they're not going to make it. You just know that one guy's just like, okay, it's your turn. And then he's like, no, you take this and you go in there and you light it. And then you run back and run as fast as you can or you're going to get buried. How far in is it? I don't know, 3 miles?
Don't worry.
Shut up!
Don't worry. Take turns, okay?
Yeah.
Once your turn's done, I'll go.
Yeah.
He's not making it back.
Get the next guy.
Yeah. And now it's your turn. He didn't come out. He's on the other side.
Yeah. Just take this dynamite to him.
Yeah.
But if you see a wall, throw the dynamite at it. It might help.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
So Vancouver's also become a really huge filming location. It's the third biggest filming hub in all of North America after Los Angeles and Manhattan.
It's because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
This is where my expertise lies.
I know.
But yeah, it's because it's just cheaper to produce all that stuff in Canada because the Canadian dollar's lower than the American dollar.
Yes. It's very, very...
At one point.
Yeah, at one point.
Yeah.
So movies that were filmed there are both Percy Jackson movies, 50 Shades of Grey, Juno, Fantastic Four, iRobot. They also filmed a lot of TV series there, like The X-Files, Riverdale, The 100, Flash.
Supernatural.
Supergirl.
No one cares about Supergirl.
So, in present day, the metropolitan of Vancouver is made up of 21 municipalities. The city of Vancouver is just one of them. And the Picton family lived a 35-minute drive from Vancouver's downtown in Port Coquitlam.
Excuse me?
Coquitlam.
Bless you.
I know. I got a really bad cold right now. Anyways.
So what's the name of the place that they live?
Coquitlam.
Bless you.
Port Coquitlam. So it's part of the Tri-Cities of the metropolitan area. Vancouver to the east and northeast of the city proper. The Tri-Cities consist of Port Moody, Port Coquitlam, and Coquitlam. I love it. Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam.
Coquitlam.
So, did the people in Port Coquitlam just be like, "Oh, we want to be Coquitlam too," and they're like, "You can't." Well, then we'll be Port Coquitlam.
Yeah, that's the saddest Coquitlam.
Yeah. So, Port Coquitlam lies between the Pitt and Coquitlam rivers.
Coquitlam.
Yep.
This sounds like a Smurf word.
I know. Coquitlam.
Coquitlam.
God, it's rare to hear words with that many Q's in it.
It's funny because there's only one Q.
That's a fucked up word.
Yeah. So between 1,200 and 1,500 people had settled into the area where the city of Port Coquitlam was incorporated on March 7, 1913, and largely it was split off largely from the district of Coquitlam. I love how much Coquitlam there is in this. Like,
it's become a joke in itself. Where the word,
it's just a filler word.
The word, it's just funny.
Yeah. So, lively Kingsway Avenue is the town center, and it's lined with businesses and wooden sidewalks. And,
wait, what city?
Lively Kingsway Avenue in Port Coquitlam is the town center.
Okay.
What city is this?
Coquitlam.
Coquitlam.
Not Port Coquitlam? No.
Port Coquitlam.
Yeah.
So, the Canadian Pacific Railroad is actually the biggest employer in this area. There was a devastating fire on the Kingsway in 1920 that shifted the whole downtown. City Hall was built on Shaughnessy Street in 1914, and they literally had to move it after this fire in 1920.
Shaughnessy?
Shaughnessy. Shaughnessy, there we go. I'm lost. Lost already.
In Coquitlam?
Yeah, I got lost in Coquitlam.
God, the one name you can't pronounce, and it's a fucking Irish name.
Yeah. Tells you what I think about the Irish.
We love and respect the Irish community. No, we don't.
No, we don't.
I'm Irish. My mom's maiden name is actually Mick. Just straight Mick, which is a very German name that got transformed once they went to Ireland.
Did you know he was Irish when you hired him?
Job interview. But I should have known from how his tools sound. Knock, knock, knock.
Knock, knock, knock.
So the growth slowed around World War I and then the Great Depression because, of course, it did. They get hit really hard. And then by the end of the Second World War, I almost said Second Cold War. The Second World War in 1945, there was a highway completed in 1948 that brought a lot of residents and businesses in because now they can commute. So between 1941 and 1951, the population doubled from 1,539 to 3,232. That's it. And then in 1961, the population doubled again to 8,111. And then by 1980, it was 27,000 people. So according to the government website in Port Coquitlam, the population is now 61,000 and has like a massive amount of businesses, commercial, industrial areas, some neighborhoods. So I'm guessing like suburbs. And then there's a very strong sense of community known as Poco Pride.
Only found in Coquitlam.
In Port Coquitlam. So on October 24th, no, wait a minute, I'm not even going to go into that one yet. So,
Spoiler.
Catch up with a guy named Leonard Picton, who was born in England on July 19th, 1896. 3 years later, he and his parents emigrated to Canada. No reason ever given why. There's just not a lot known about his early years. In fact, we catch up with him in his 40s, and people have really come to the consensus at this point in Port Coquitlam that he is lazy and unambitious.
Typical Picton.
So he seems really happy to just keep being a bachelor and working on a farm. But then one day he really, really, really surprised everybody by announcing that he was engaged to a woman who was 16 years younger than him. He had met her in a coffee shop. Her name was Helen Louise. She was born on March 20th, 1912 in Calgary, Alberta. So didn't emigrate from England. She was born in Canada. And she was raised in a little town just outside of there. Just outside of Saskatchewan, known as Raymond's Creek.
Isn't
Not Coquitlam?
16 years younger, like, pretty okay for the time?
Yeah, it's fine for the time.
Yeah.
So Helen would become his wife really, really quickly, and she was basically the driving force of their marriage. And they really, both of them, did not care about how they looked to anyone, including themselves. They did not care about anything. In fact, everyone describes Leonard and Helen as looking haggard, and they stink.
Oh my God. Are they the Twitches? The Twits. That's what it is. The Roald Dahl book.
I don't know.
It's a couple who are like really dumb, gross, and lazy.
That was pretty much them.
You don't know who Roald Dahl is?
I don't read.
Chocolate Factory, Matilda.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I know that. I know the author now. I almost said actor. But
I really?
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
So they're really, really, really relaxed on their personal hygiene. They're missing most of their teeth. And Helen didn't have much hair except on her face. Her chin was so hairy that the neighborhood kids around her spoke about how she had a goatee.
Nice.
And they would make fun of all her children for this. She also had a very persistent high screech and only spoke in a hillbilly dialect.
What?
Yeah. So she was, yeah, basically. So she was stout. She was short and stout with a round face. She always wore a cotton house dress over a pair of men's jeans. And when it rained, she put an old jacket of Leonard's on. And nobody ever remembers her seeing in shoes. In fact, she would mostly go around barefoot or wear men's thick rubber gumboots. And when she wore these boots, people described her as waddling like a duck. Okay. Very close.
I know, right?
So, Leonard was dressed very similarly. He would have a dirty t-shirt hanging over dirty blue jeans, black rubber boots, and a beat-up hat. His hygiene was terrible. And so they had 3 kids. Linda, the oldest, was born in 1948, and she was like I said, she's the oldest, and she was round-faced and short, like Helen. And then Robert was born, and he was taller, narrow-faced, with a long pointed nose, and looked exactly like his dad. They were both said to have a rat face.
That's just the dirt.
So Robert was born in 1949, and he was mostly referred to as Bobby. And in later life, everybody called him Willie. But his brother David was born in 1950, so they literally just kicked these kids out every fucking year after they got married. Like, just... But
Get the hell out!
Yeah. So he also resembled his mother. He was round-faced and short. So Robert's birth was actually very difficult. He was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. So it was a really bad...
He didn't want to be born to his parents.
Yeah. His family actually wondered if the cord somehow caused brain damage because he was described as being very, very slow, except that his memory was remarkable. He could recall memories as far back as you could possibly think. In fact, all the way back to being 2 years old. And like he could just recall anything that you talked to him about. Like he could go into details. So
kind of sounds less like he was slow and more like autism.
Maybe. Yeah. So like I said, one of his earliest memories come from the age of 2, where he was when he was living in a converted chicken coop, and Robert had to lift up the floorboard under his bed to get cold water from a spring that ran under the chicken coop. So he's living in a chicken coop, and he's lifting a floorboard to get drinking water because apparently they didn't have running water. So they just did it out of this creek that their animals also like pissed and shit in, and this is him from 2 years old into later childhood, like
living in a chicken coop.
So when he was 3, he crashed his father's truck loaded with pigs into a tree. He went hog wild. Yeah.
With Tim Allen.
We shouldn't be poking fun at him.
Pigs.
Yeah. So, in 1991, he would actually be interviewed, and he would detail the entire incident to a pen pal named Victoria. And he didn't actually, when I say pen pal, he didn't write her letters. He just recorded them and sent them on tape to whomever. And his exact quote was, "I turn around and the truck starts rolling. The pigs all start jumping off, and my dad's running behind the pigs trying to holler to stop the truck. I didn't know what to do, so I smashed right into a telephone pole, totaled the truck right out. I sure got the hell beaten out of me, but that's what happens."
I turn around and the truck starts rolling.
Yep.
It's like you could hear the southern drawl.
And the pigs all start jumping off, and my dad's running behind the
pigs trying to holler to stop the truck.
What I do love too is like in his brain he's like saying this, and to me how it reads out is that his dad's like, "Stop, truck, stop!" Like,
no, you get back here.
Yeah.
And he's British, says, "Stop, truck, stop." Yeah. Probably like I like to imagine it was a posh British accent, because honestly
how terrible they sound.
Well, the Cockney would sound too much authentic in that circumstance. So "Please stop!
Oh no, the pigs!
No, the pigs! Stop the pigs!"
So
they've driven the car.
Yeah. And then I love that they beat the shit out of him at 3 years old. Like, you left the 3-year-old in the goddamn truck.
He could have stopped the truck.
Yeah. Instead, he smashed into a telephone pole and totaled the truck right out.
I knew this kid would be a terrible driver.
This is what you get.
And then all I can think is the shrill voice of his mom, like how she only speaks in a hillbilly screech, trying to give him shit while he's getting the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah,
that sounds like
mom's like, "So
life on the Picton farm was completely rough, really primitive. Chickens, ducks, dogs, and cows and pigs basically had free range of the house. Now, their kids are living in a fucking chicken coop. The animals live inside the house.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So their home was so dirty that neighbors often remarked how it would be impossible for humans to live in there. And poor hygiene is something that all the kids except for Linda, the daughter, continued to practice throughout their entire lives. So they just learned this poor hygiene from their parents all the way through. It heavily affected their social lives because, of course, it did. Like,
really?
Yeah. I wouldn't want to hang around with people covered in dog and cat and pig and cow shit all day. And
we're hanging out.
That's just prejudice, man.
Yeah.
You meet some great people covered in complete other shit.
That's just racist. All right. So, The kids were also frequently bullied because of how gross their house was and so on. They got bathed once a week, and their clothes were rarely ever washed. And they carried to school with them the odor of the farm, so urine, shit, blood, piss. Sorry, urine's already there. Get them
urine twice. It's so bad. The urine was
so bad.
So bad it needs.
I'm guessing like pus, and because they're not clean, they probably have infections. Like it's So they basically had to work the farm when they weren't in school. Before and after school, they had to slop about 200 pigs and clean out all those pens. They cleaned after 8 cows. The cows were milked by hand by family members. And after that, they didn't really clean up like for weeks or months on end. So like, I love that they're cleaning the pig pens. Yeah. But not themselves. Like,
well, the pig's got to be healthy.
Yeah. So,
but the mom isn't.
So this, of course, gets them where they don't have very many friends. They're actually called nicknames by their classmates like Stinky Piggy. Because kids are clever.
Yeah.
So their dad, Leonard, was actually known in the community. He was known to most people by Piggy. And he actually didn't seem to mind this name at all. He let them all refer to him as this.
I thought he was a beanstalk.
Yeah, but he's called Piggy. That's the name. So Piggy Picton.
Yeah. You know what? I can't argue with alliteration.
Yeah.
That's the name.
So most of Robert and his siblings' clothes were homemade or hand-me-down, except for once when he was about 5. His mom brought him a brand new outfit for Christmas, but the clean, heavily starched clothes made him complain that it hurts me. It hurts me. And then he tore the clothes off and ran around buck naked.
Okay.
So clean clothes hurt him. That's how dirty they are.
What is this?
What's going on here?
It's like Randy not being allergic to shirts.
Yeah. on Trailer Park Boys. Yeah. So Linda, their sister, was actually the most normal out of the Picton children. She actually hung out with other kids, took care of her appearance. She would attend Sunday school, and I think that's mostly that's mostly because if she was at the house, she wanted to be away from her family as much as possible. So go to Sunday school, go out with people, be as clean as possible. And because you're out and doing all this stuff, you're able to get clean and not have to worry about it. She also lived with relatives in Vancouver, and people remarked that Leonard didn't really want her on the pig farm because he thought that the pig farm was not a place for a young girl.
Honestly, he's wrong, but it's at least when you get out of the bad situation, it's not easy to argue it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is sexism saves lives.
You said that, not me.
I did not elaborate on such a thing out loud.
I did not say that. I did not say that, but I'm certainly thinking it very loud. So, sometimes Helen would bought her daughter party dresses, encouraged her to go out with other kids. But again, this really was not the case for the Picton boys. They were supposed to stay home and do their work. So they were basically heavily commanded and supervised by their mother. Like I said, she was the driving force of the marriage and the family. I have a feeling that Leonard just kind of dealt with the fact that he had a woman.
Yeah, honestly, she's massive.
Yeah,
he's a beanpole. She can snap him in two. Yeah, she's screaming. Honey, do you think we could talk?
He's also 16 years.
Why am I on the bottom?
Yeah. She's also 16 years younger than him, and he was 40. He was in his 40s when he met her. So, yeah, like by this point, they're probably about 8-9 years old. So he's in his mid 50s, and she's only just hitting the 40s. So, their neighborhood outside of them.
Imagine it turned out she was just a pig in a wig.
That's
the description isn't far from it.
No, it's not. Like
she just spoke in a high-pitched squealing noise.
What I love is we haven't even gotten to the worst of it yet, and she's already it's already a terrible fucking situation, and it's so good. Like, this is so outrageous. So the neighborhood around them and around their little farm was full of doctors and affluent families. So they are these dirty, stinky, not taking care of themselves, loud, roughhousing, driving fucking trucks into telephone poles.
3-year-olds driving trucks into telephone
cows and pigs everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, the guy next door is a doctor. Like
I do say, what is happening over there?
Yeah.
Get
out of here, you damn!
Yeah. So during their youth, the Picton boys lived in an area known as Dawes Hill, which is actually really, really close to the hospital complex. So that's why I say it's just full of doctors. They're literally not too far from a hospital. I would not want to go to that hospital if I saw them that close to it. I'd be like, the fuck? Like,
it's easy to dispose of the body after they're finished. They just throw it at the pig farm.
Yeah. So
the wife takes care of everything.
Yeah.
So slop with the pigs.
So as the hospital complex around them grew to accommodate 4,600 patients, nice homes on the hill overlooking the farm area were built for doctors and families. This made so that the Pictons rode to school with these well-mannered, well-dressed, very clean kids of hospital staff and doctors, and this led to even more terrible abuse on these kids from their classmates. One of the doctor's daughters is quoted as saying, "We were all terrible to the Pictons, especially to Robert." So, making the Picton boys an even bigger magnet for people was that they had problems with their speech. David talked too fast and sounded just like his mother with a high-pitched squeal of
Tweet!
And he couldn't pronounce his R's, which made him sound basically like Elmer Fudd. And the more worked up he got about something, the more this became a bigger problem for him. He got even more and more incoherent.
What happens when you're half pig?
Robert was said to not talk much at all, and if he did, he babbled in a high-pitched, fast voice. I just imagine him with his whole little spiel about the being 3 years old and hitting in a tree, that hillbilly accent in a high pitched voice going real quack. Real quack. All right. So let's go. Let's go.
I think you killed him.
1955.
Oh, that was quack.
So Robert wasn't a great student. In 1955, he had entered grade 1 of Millside Elementary, and according to the standardized test, his intelligence was scored as low. So
it didn't have a number. It was just low.
So some guy who's there doing the standardized test, and he goes through the test results, and he's just low. Just
Didn't even fill out his name. That's 200 points right there.
yeah. Who's Quack?
I was actually going to say thought speed. Quack.
It just sounds like Holdor. Quack, 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 quack. Whack.
So by 1956, he'd improved a little bit, but his teachers still decided to hold him back and make him repeat grade 2. Grade 3, so he's done 2 years of grade 2 now, so now he's in grade 3. Teachers would identify him as learning impaired and give him special lessons. It's about the only form of education that he really got. Because his mom and dad didn't really care about education. They're more about, you should be working on the farm.
Right.
So he remained in special education for the remainder of his time in school, even transferring to a different public school from to Mary Hill Elementary in Port Coquitlam.
Oh, God.
Here we go again.
I forgot about that place.
Yeah. So then early on in their grade school careers, the boys started breaking out of the school. They'd run back home, hide under their beds, and not come back out until school had let out and their parents wouldn't suspect them of skipping the day.
Sorry, I just realized that you have it phonetically put out because you couldn't read it properly.
It's part of the thing.
Oh, okay.
So they'd run back home and all that and basically just hide from their parents for the whole day, which I don't think would be too hard with all the fucking animals around.
They just paint their whole body white with a couple black spots. Moo! Moo!
We're a pig farm, you idiot!
Yeah. So both boys spent more time with the farm pigs than they did with any other person, essentially. So when they weren't doing that, they would go into the woods around the farm and they'd fish from the creek where salmon actually swam up and spawned. So they would be catching fish. So that's actually I gotta think that's probably gotta be their best memories of that area in that time.
Yeah.
So while their mom and dad weren't exactly model parents, Helen did have a real sweet spot for Robert. His sister was quoted in the Vancouver Sun in 2002 saying, quote, "Robert just adored Mom. He and Mom were so close. Robert was never close to Dad. Robert was kind of a mom's boy. Why? Well, in 1960, at the age of 11 or 12...
Oh, don't say this.
Robert would use his life savings, which was a total of $35 at this point, for a 12-year-old, to purchase a 3-week-old black and white calf. He loved the calf, and it literally was his only friend.
Aww.
And he described it as really pretty as the day is long.
Aww.
Robert took all the responsibility for it. He fed it, cared for it, kept it in his pen, made sure the pen was nice and clean. And then he looked forward to coming home every afternoon to take care of his friend. And then one day he got to the pen, and there was no calf in there. His dad told him to go look in the barn. So Robert took off to the barn, and I'm going to quote this. Quote, "And here I seen the calf hanging upside down there. They butchered my calf on me. Oh boy, was I mad. I couldn't talk to anybody for 3 or 4 days. I locked everybody out of my own mind. I didn't want to talk to anybody. His mom tried making things right by giving him $21, which was more than he paid for it.
$20.
Oh, sorry. $20, which was more than he paid for it, but he still was upset. Again, later he was quoted saying, like my mother says, that was a good $1 for the calf. You can go buy another. And I says, no, I was going to keep the calf for the rest of my life, and now it's gone. That really upset me. But that happens. That's life. I mean, we're only here for so long. When your time is over, your time is over."
Your parents killed it.
They butchered his friend. He loved this thing, took care of it, and then his dad just killed it, and then was like, "Oh yeah, go look in the barn."
Yeah, it was so callous.
Fuck, man. Like, so, his brother and him literally stunk, like I said. And they were neglected at home. They had speech impediments, poor grades. And around this time, the one good thing that would happen to him after this whole calf thing was that Robert met a new friend, a young woman named Lisa Yelts, who would be described in her later life as a cop-hating biker.
What?
Yeah.
I was expecting a very loud person.
Oh, God. What I love is, like I told you, this story is just ridiculous. So in 1963, when Robert was 14 and Dave was 13, the family bought a new parcel of land on the east side of Port Coquitlam. The reason was because the area was expanding because of the hospital, and I guess the doctors around them really wanted to get rid of them. So they were going to put in a new highway and some housing developments in the area. And so Helen and Leonard paid the Manurkle family $18,000 for 40 acres of low-lying property at 993 Dominion Avenue on the eastern edge of Port Coquitlam. It was 6 kilometers from the original Dawes Hill homestead, so where they originally were located. So they moved 6 kilometers away now. So those doctors got rid of them.
Jesus.
And the new farm was the biggest property in the area. The old blue and white farmhouse that they had on their property was pried off its foundation, put on a flatbed, and towed to Dominion Avenue. They didn't just build something new. They had to bring the old stuff from there to where they are.
I don't want to build a new house. Can't we just bring the old one?
Can you just imagine it's full of the animals?
They probably herded them in there like Noah's Ark.
Yeah, don't worry, we got this. It'll be fine on the flatbed. So
good thing we took out that other one, so that way we have space for this. Isn't that right, Robert?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
So this area was actually really, really rural in comparison to Dawes Hill. They're really, really far away from it. They'd also eventually buy a Dutch-style hip roof barn from a property a few houses down on Dominion Avenue, and they would bring it to their house as well. So they bought an old, dilapidated barn house and brought it over. The avenue that they're on ran parallel to the highway that was being built. And it was only a few kilometers to a dead end of a dike, that was held back by a log-filled pit. Sorry, the log-filled pit river, that ran higher than the farmland beside it. So that made them irrigating the land really easy. So now they can kind of prosper in this land. So now they can get some clean water going in here, but they don't.
And then they can be even lazier.
Yeah. So the Dominion Avenue wasn't even paved. It was a dirty country road that was full of muddy sloughs, and was either full of black water, weeds. Either side was full of black water, weeds, frogs, and thick blackberry stalks. So they're on a dirt mud road, and there's a river there, but it's full of black water.
But blackberries.
Yeah, blackberries. So as Dominion petered out, it met Burns Road, which was another country lane that ran for about a mile, and a lot of hobby farms on it. So that they grew blueberries or raised chickens. Nothing like what they're doing, where they're raising fucking pigs and cows and kids. So when the Picton family moved, their daughter Linda did not go with them. She said she couldn't wait to get away from her family. She was miserable at home and had run away so many times by this point. Because they're 14, so she's 15 at this point.
How did she end up coming back?
Pa went out there to fucking caught her. Like,
hog tied her, dragged her back.
I remember this one time she ran on off. And
you know, I galloped behind her on one of our cows.
Yeah.
And lassoed her leg. Then when we got there, we tied all the legs together. This is what in the field we call a hog tie.
The experts.
Sorry, I'm British. This is what we call a hog tie.
Isn't that right, Ma? She had left her grade 8 class in Port Coquitlam during the Christmas break and moved in with relatives in Vancouver. So while in Vancouver, she attended Lord Byng High School, and it was in a really comfortable neighborhood close to the University of British Columbia. And she rarely ever talks about her family.
No shit.
She didn't have any interaction with them. It seemed really common for them to not see each other ever. She just never, and anybody who ever knew her really said that she never fit in with them because she was a bright, clean girl. So, one of the neighbors said, quote, "I only met Linda once. She seemed like she was cut from a different cloth. She was clean. She had class. You wouldn't have believed she came from the same family." It didn't take long for the new neighbors around them, though, to notice the Pictons. They actually made a really good living. Like, a woman who lived around the area and boarded her horse with the Picton for $25 a month, later said, "Money was no real problem, but by the way they lived was something I'd never seen before in my life. They would wear the same clothes every day. The boys would do the pigs and come in with their boots on, with oil and grease everywhere." Oh, that's even worse. "Their relationship with their mom seemed very strange to me. She seemed too old to be the mother of these kids. The place was an absolute pigsty. Walk into the kitchen and you couldn't see the counters for the dirt on it. The floor were covered in slop and dirt. There were papers, food everywhere. There was no proper furniture. I seem to remember the living room just had a mattress in it. I wouldn't go into any of the other rooms, but the mom was very nice to me, and she talked and talked and talked in that high-pitched screech.
Really?
Yeah. And the mom did the cooking, and she always had her gumboots on. Later, Willie seemed to run the pig end of the business, and Dave was always out doing construction jobs. It was all like something out of that movie Deliverance. So another neighbor remembered Helen keeping all the kitchen cupboards locked, and she was the only one who had the key. So she just, you imagine she's just locked up these cupboards even though everything is filthy and falling apart around her. By the time that they had bought the farm on Dominion, Leonard was 77 years old.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
The oldest? Or no, sorry, that's the dad.
He's 77. Yeah. And so he's too old to do much of the work around the farm. And he swelled so bad. So the kids did all the work with some hired hands. So they had maybe some farm hands in it. So they can afford hired hands. They literally are living like this just because they can live like this.
Ugh. This story's starting to gross me out.
Yeah. So around 15 years old, Robert left school for good. He kind of knew how to read. He knew a little bit of writing, but not enough. He had picked up a bunch of fun quotes from his mom, basically quoting things like, "There's always a reason for everything. Life goes on.
And
I try to help. Quite a spell. Crock shit, but that's what happens. That's life. That's not here nor there. We're here today. We're not here tomorrow. That's way above my head." That's all in one little ramble. That's good.
Suey.
Yeah, Suey. So when he left school, the reason, basically, according to his friend Lisa Yelds, was over a nudie pen. She would later give an account of saying that what happened was he was at the Cracker Jack, a local shop, and bought a pen with a flippin' lady. When the pen was turned upside down, it was rude underneath. The principal said he was going to beat him, and Willie said, "You do that and I quit." The principal wasn't backing down, so Willie quit then and there. He quit school because of a nudie pattern.
That seems par for the core with this family.
Yeah. So Robert now could focus on the farm, and his mom got him an apprenticeship as a meat cutter, so he was learning how to be a butcher so that he could properly butcher the pigs.
And then slowly kill his own friends.
So he quickly became very skilled at this trade, skinning and dissecting animals with really, really brutal efficiency. Like, he was just naturally inclined to do this. Robert would work as a butcher's apprentice for the next several years while also running the farm. He's working fucking hard. So, in 1967, on October 16th, his brother Dave had stayed to school he had stayed in school longer than Willie had, and he had dated girls, and he actually had more or less a functional social life. So I find that interesting because they're both dirty and all that kind of stuff, and they're both slow, and Dave here talks without any R's, so
I thought it was Robert that talked without
no,
R's.
he's the one who talks in a high-pitched voice but doesn't really talk a lot.
Oh, okay.
So Dave here, he's dating girls. Like, it's crazy that he still looks like shit, has no clean clothes, smells like terrible, can barely talk properly, but he's getting girlfriends. So
He's just hallucinating them.
oh god. So he got in his
Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting ladies.
So shortly after he turned 16, he had gotten his driver's license, and he took his father's 1960 GMC one-ton truck out and about. And around 7:30 in the evening, he was barreling down Dominion Avenue in the direction of the farm when 14-year-old Tim Barrett was walking down the same road. Barrett had just left his best friend's house, and Dave actually accidentally ran him over.
Oh.
Dave then stopped the truck, checked on the kid, freaked out, hopped back in, and gunned it home. He told his parents what he did, and his mom said that she knew exactly what to do. So they sent him off after examining the truck and seeing an impact that was dented on the right fender. It had very light damage, and they spotted the blood on it, so they kind of cleaned it off the blood, and then she sent Dave to a truck garage nearby.
A garage truck.
Yeah, garage truck. But they sent them off to a truck garage nearby, and they had a lot of their farm vehicles fixed there all the time. Dave told the mechanic that some timber had fallen on the truck and that they were building a tractor shed, and one of the ring posts holding up the roof fell on the truck. And it was completely ignoring the fact that the dent was the shape of, not the shape of, a thing, but the shape of a human being. Round.
Okay.
Instead of...
I'm going back to the cartoon thing where it's like when they run through a wall and it's their imprint.
So the mechanic was surprised that they were even concerned with this, because the truck was really banged up already. And it was it's not like the family took very good care of themselves or any of their stuff. So the mechanic was quoted as saying, normally they let this kind of thing go unnoticed. They just picked up a large mechanic's hammer and pushed it out. Pushed the dent out.
Yeah.
So he laughed when they asked him to paint it. This is a beat up, rusted off paint, chipping off of it, and he paint it. Paint that little section right there.
Just cover it, you know?
Yeah.
They get caught for murder because it's too fucking clean.
So the mechanic said, fuck that. And so Dave drove it home, and they painted up the marks with red house paint, and then covered those marks that are just painted up with mud. So while Dave had gone to go get the truck fixed, Helen had walked down the road, found the boy, and this is where you can't prove it because she was never charged with anything, but Forensics determined that he didn't die on impact. He had died in a ditch 10 feet from the road. So everybody essentially believes that Helen found him still breathing, rolled his body to the ditch, and then drowned him in it.
Oh.
So they ruled the death as an accident, but they were really skeptical about it. Helen eventually, allegedly told one of her son's friends that she had drowned the kid and then threatened that same kid that she had just said this to keep quiet. Robert would later tell Lisa Yelds the whole story. When the mechanic who fixed the dent heard on the radio that somebody was hit and was the victim of a hit and run, he knew exactly who had done it. He called the police. The police went and talked to Dave. They didn't buy the story, and they eventually took the truck as evidence and discovered the house paint and the mud cover-up job. Dave was charged in juvenile court for failing to remain at the scene of an accident and convicted of something else, but the records are sealed. So he was still a juvenile, so I have a feeling that because in Canada, juvenile records are held, they just gave him some sort of slap on the wrist.
Honestly, they should have just cleaned off the blood and then not bothered painting. Yeah, because there's so little at their place that could be proven by forensics because of how dirty it is.
Yeah. So when I say that he got off with a real slap on the wrist, this is what he actually got. He got indefinite probation, and his driver's license was suspended until he turned 21. So for only 4.5 years. So he only got 4.5 years worth of probation, basically, and couldn't drive until for another 4.5 years. No big deal. So in the late 1970s, around Robert's 21st birthday, Robert, who's still living on the farm, never lived off the farm, quit his butcher apprenticeship job really suddenly. He did say that he later regretted this because if he had stuck around, he would have finished his apprenticeship. If he had stuck around for another 6 months, he would have finished the apprenticeship after 7 years.
Oh.
What?
6 more months and you would have gotten your full license to be a butcher and would have been able to work anywhere in Canada as a butcher.
Wait a minute. It takes 7 years to become a butcher?
I think it's through the apprenticeship, so it's based on how much you've learned.
Oh, I get it, because he didn't go to school.
Yeah.
He didn't go to school at all for it. It was just the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Still, an apprenticeship for electrician is shorter, isn't it? I was like,
yeah,
but only if you go to school, right?
Because you don't want to have a high school diploma, right?
Fair enough.
So, with only 6.5 years of this, he went back to the farm full time. He would now buy pigs at auction and butcher them on the farm. Because of this, Robert found himself a lot close to a place called the West Coast Reduction Limited, which is a place where they take animal waste to be rendered into other products, like hot dogs and stuff like that.
Huh.
Gross.
So West Coast Reduction was near downtown Vancouver, and after he visited the plant, he would stop by Low Track, which is a seedy neighborhood of Vancouver, part of the downtown East Side neighborhood that was saturated with crime, sex work, drug addiction, and a lot of homeless people. So a lot of people who are not the best people to be hanging around with when you're, already a dirty farmer with money.
Yeah. Or the perfect place to go because you're a dirty farmer.
Yeah. So in 1972, Dave was meeting women whose company he didn't have to pay for. He was really, really good around girls. And he had a steady girlfriend named Sandy Fellauer. So she lived just north of them near their neighbors, the Harveys, who had a blueberry farm on Devon Road. She was attractive and well-liked. So it's not like he got somebody who was terrible and dirty. He got a girl that was attractive and everybody really liked her. No one understood why she got with Dave.
They like to do dirty things.
Yeah. So then they soon started a family, and Dave moved away from the farm and stopped butchering pigs. He would pay for, like, he didn't think it would pay the bills, so he got into
Robert, right?
No, Dave.
Oh, okay.
So he got into working in construction and demolition. He also started a topsoil business selling the family farm's dirt to construction projects all over the area. So Dave went into business with Sandy's brother Sigmund, and they called their new operation DNS Bulldozing. Robert stayed home, and he just lived with his parents. In 1973, Leonard Piggy Picton is 86, and he's senile, and he's stumbling around the house, and Robert starts getting some pen pals at the age of 23. His favorite pen pal was a girl named Connie Anderson from Pontiac, Michigan. So, in 1974, January, Robert decides to go visit Connie. And before he leaves, he tells his friends, and they get him drunk for the first time because he's a virgin. Robert buys a bus ticket and sets out on the journey, and it's his first time that he's ever really away from home, and it lasts for 6 weeks. When he got to Pontiac, he tells Connie that while traveling, someone asked him to be a male model for $40 an hour. Rat-faced, dirty, covered in pig shit, male model.
Mm-hmm.
By the time that Robert had left Pontiac, he was under the impression that him and Connie were engaged. Quote, I was engaged. She was the love of my life, but she couldn't leave her job. I couldn't leave my job. I couldn't leave the farm. Their engagement fizzled out, and he returned to the farm. In 1975, he starts to buy sex from people around him. He starts spending his off hours looking for sex workers. Local sex workers tell all their friends that Robert spends huge amounts of money on them and doesn't just pay for them by hour, but buys them whatever they want. And he gains this reputation of a man to be with. So, because he's buying them everything they want, including the drugs they want. Robert starts to clean up a bit and starts frequenting a pub in East Hastings called Astoria. And he became basically a fixture there. The bar was really rough. And an Astoria bartender said that Robert was hanging around and, quote, he was a wannabe, you know. He wanted to be a biker, a Hells Angel, a mean leather guy, but everyone knew that he was a weasel, a wannabe, end quote. But he did like it, and people liked him, and they didn't, like, treat him like his mom did, where they just
coddled him.
Yeah.
The word coddle's right there.
I know, but I didn't want to use it. The sex workers were happy to have him as a client, and so he starts to sell drugs a little bit and had some good money from some good coke that he used to sell. Nobody has any information on where he got the drugs to sell through all of this. They have the fact that he stinks like shit all the time, but not where he gets the fucking...
But he cleaned up a bit.
That's true. So,
Dave didn't even clean up a bit.
That's true.
He got fucking married and he didn't even clean up.
So, he now has like a double life. He's normally like a really laid back farm guy. And in the city where he's a regular at the bar, he's a big spender. So he learned to socialize in all this, and he seemed nice. People described him as caring. And by the late 70s, sex workers that he frequented said that he also could be really cruel and violent. He started developing a real rough, like, taste for rough sex. It made him feel really powerful, which I'm sure comes from the fact that he's never really had any kind of power.
Yeah.
And the more that these people, because they're prostitutes and they're addicts and stuff like that, and he's paying them for this, the more they let him get away with it, the more he started to crave that power. So he would get further and further in. January 1st, 1978, Leonard, who's 91 at this point, was diagnosed with cancer and dies. And,
wow, that was quack.
Yeah. It's funny because all I could think to myself is he's 91 and they lived like terribly.
Yeah. Well, that's why the cancer moves so quick.
Yeah. It was aggressively quack. So, not long after this, Helen gets diagnosed with cancer as well. Robert took care of her, changed her diapers, nursed her, made sure everything ran on the farm. He would later say that he found the experience traumatic. 1978, Dave also splits up with Sandy, who started a family but never married. It's partially due to the fact that Dave liked to fuck other women all the time.
That's why.
Yeah. So
Who would have known?
Robert was actually very, very hurt by their sudden breakup, and he worshipped Sandy to the point that when his brother and her broke up, he asked her to marry him, and she refused.
Dude tried to...
Yeah, and she didn't move away either. She stayed in town, so they're still seeing her. And now she's broken up with one brother and rejected the other brother. So in 1978 as well, there's a fire on the Picton pig farm. The burn barns down.
The burn barns. Wow.
Yeah.
With all that dirt, it must have been very quack.
Yeah. So the barn burns down, along with a few other buildings, and 600 pigs die.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I want you to think about that, too. 600 pigs died. They didn't say all the pigs died. And they let their farm animals just run around. What the fuck is happening here?
Yeah, did the pigs want to die? Did they clamber into the barn? Like,
so between his normal responsibilities of taking care of his mother and operating the farm, he now spends all his spare time trying to rebuild the barn. And he never finished that job. April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1979. After being ill for several months, Helen Picton dies at 67. And Robert described his relationship with her as being like, quote, 2 peas in a pod. He's full of these little, like, euphemisms that she gave him.
Euphemisms.
So Dave didn't seem to care as much. He really just didn't care about losing his mom or losing his girlfriend, Sandy. Soon after his mom dies, Dave moves this girl named Vicki Evans into the Picton farm, who's his new girlfriend. In the will, the 3 Picton children inherited the slaughterhouse and farm and everything else. The farm was valued at $275,000, so they paid $18,000 for just this strip of land to begin with, and now it's worth over $250,000.
And it's still dirty.
Yeah. And then there's the rest of the family's estate, which is worth $150,000 worth of real estate holdings and cash. According to the mom's will, Linda and David were each given $88,500, and this is like pre-1980 money, and some property. Robert was completely betrayed in this. He got $20,000, no land, unless he stayed on the farm until he was 40 years old. Then he would get a portion of the farm.
What?
He took care of the mom. He ran the fucking farm.
That is bullshit. God, well, you know, and the funny thing is, like, Linda will probably just sell her property to Robert because she's like, I don't fucking want this.
I don't want to be here. Like,
give me your 40 grand or your 20 grand and voila, you have the rest.
Yes.
So Robert buys himself a 1977 Ford truck. And then he moved into a trailer that sat on a secluded area of the property, and he would just be there betrayed, while his brother Dave lived in the main house with all the fucking animals. And his fucking girlfriend. Like,
and the trailer's probably cleaner, actually, and nicer.
So, like, Robert's mood would actually improve after his mom's death, because now he knew whatever he wants, because now he realizes that he doesn't have to listen to his mom because she's not there anymore. So he starts to entertain women at his trailer. And he takes them shopping.
Like juggling?
Yeah.
Do handstands.
He gets really jazzed.
No, they get jazzed.
Oh, that's true.
Because of how surprised they are.
Yeah.
Ah! That's so cool.
So just for sups, regular thing in our Black Eyed Children episode, the guy said that he was so scared that he got jazzed.
And we've officially interpreted that as jazz hands.
Yeah.
Ah!
So he would also pay them cash or in drugs to clean his trailer and do chores around the farm. And he would even teach some of them how to butcher a pig. I love that they're coming by and they're like prostitutes, and he's like, yeah, I totally paid for the hour. You gotta help me come kill this pig.
Here's a cleaver.
I'm gonna teach you a trade for very. I'm gonna pay you to learn a trade.
So, not all of them were prostitutes. Sometimes they would just put up with him and sleep with him. Sometimes because he was really generous with his money and drugs. Like
Right.
So.
So a prostitute.
Yeah. Just not part of the profession. So they ignored all his weird behaviors, his odd living situation, like even the poor hygiene, just because of all this. September 12th, 1978. Lillian Jean O'Dare is declared a missing person. She was 34, and she'd be the earliest known sex worker that Robert was known to associate with to go missing in the downtown East Side. The first in a group that would ultimately reach 65 women. Her body wasn't found until April 22nd, 1989. She disappeared on September 12th, 1978. Over 10 years later, her body's found.
Wow. So, Willie here became Canada's Jack the Ripper.
They don't know that yet. They're just going missing.
Well, we're going to have to ask the Ripperologist on that.
Yeah, the Ripperologist. So, Lillian Jean O'Dare, how she was found was that a tenant of a rental house was doing some spring cleaning and stumbled upon her remains. Can you imagine? Gonna clean up in here and what the fuck is that?
Oh, don't mind her. She's sleeping.
Yeah. She's sleeping. She's a fucking skeleton. She is sleeping.
She slept for a really long time.
Yeah, she's. How did you think she was going to look? She's been sleeping for over 10 years.
She doesn't eat anything. God, I thought she was going to be a freeloader, but low man.
She's really tired, okay? I don't know what to do.
So, by the early 1980s, Robert has also become a tinkerer. He can pretty much fix anything and has a real aptitude for, like, any kind of mechanic job, like cars and trucks, tractors. This led him to become a really big regular at the used car auctions. When he got the cars home, he sold usable parts and tore apart the rest for scrap, separating the copper, aluminum, and brass, which we know all about because our grandpa did a lot of that shit too.
Yep.
He was doing a lot of shopping around this time. He would buy livestock at auctions. He sourced the meat to various customers, including chickens, cows, horses, and emus. I just love the fact that he has emus on his property.
Yeah, which is weird because emus are like so fucking
aggressive.
I was gonna say like uptight and like very. I'm better than you.
Clean.
Ew, gross. I can't attract women here. Good day, sir.
So Robert would slaughter, butcher, and then package the meat from the animals that he bought, and he would store it all in old freezers that his parents had left behind. So if a cow or pig was too big to kill by slitting its throat, his favorite method was to shoot it in the forehead with a nail gun. I love the idea of him just being like, you're not gonna be able to slit that thing's throat. Pachunk! Like,
and now is it talking like an actual nail gun or the
no, an actual nail gun.
Okay.
Not the
not like
that's what it's called. Yeah.
So not like what you call it, the No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining that scene where he's just like, "We're gonna flip a coin," and Emo's just like, "What?"
He was like, and then you're next. The cow's like, "Oh shit." So once one of these animals were dead, he then cut deep slits in its ankle, attach a large hook through a thick metal bar, and hoist it up foot first on a chain. I wonder where he's seen that before.
Sup, do you know where he saw that before?
Yeah, the movie Saw.
Right. Right.
You know, because it's fucking 30 years before that even comes out. So
what? It doesn't mean he couldn't watch it. Jeez.
He got an early copy.
Yeah. So after this, he'd slit its throat, catch the blood in a bucket below, then he'd gut it, skin it with a sharp fillet knife, and then dismember it with a handsaw. Robert was super jealous that his brother and their friends would be able to get women to sleep with them without having to pay for them. And he began to really take this out on the prostitutes that he would meet. So, one night in 1980, Robert was cruising Hastings Street on the east side and spotted a young woman. She was only 14. The girl was walking up the side of the road. He pulled over, picked her up, and then he immediately brandished a knife, attacked her, and raped her. When he was done, he dumped her and left her for dead in an empty parking lot, but she managed to survive. But she never reported it. She eventually came forward with a story after he was arrested for a similar crime. Dave's main business at this moment was demolition, because now he's had a falling out with his business partner because he broke up with Sandy.
Oh, right. His brother, yeah.
So everything from houses to high schools to country and western saloons. Basically, any building they built, he would just demolish them. And he had several men to drive his trucks and bulldozers. Dave wasn't living his dream, though. He really wanted to be a Hells Angels, like a Hells Angel biker member. They're literally idols that he worshipped. And there was a ton of Hells Angels in Vancouver at the time. And they had a lot of clubhouses.
Yep.
And so he would actually run some crime rackets with them. So some of the members were also dealing drugs, stealing vehicles, running protection rackets, pimping out sex workers. So I have a feeling that this is where Robert's getting his drugs, because Dave introduces them to the Picton Pig Farm, which is a secluded farm way out in the fucking bush. Animals all over, nobody's going to come bother you. So
yeah.
It was also a really great place for them to dump cars, trucks, and other property, and destroy parts for insurance money. Dave's bulldozers meant that they could dig deep holes on the farm and bury these objects like entire cars.
Jesus.
So
the awkward part is when they re-dig up a car and like, oh shit.
Yeah.
This spot's taken, guys.
Yeah, we already put one in here. You know that transport truck full of cigarettes? Yeah. We forgot about it out here.
Probably should have took out the cigarettes. I don't know, just bury it again.
Yeah. I fucking need a smoke. So, both Dave and Robert were in the business with the outlaw bikers, and Robert was overseeing work at the farm's new chop shop, which was something he was well suited to because of the fact that he got really into mechanical tinkering.
Right.
And scrap metal and so on. He managed the chop shop and also kept the pig farm running. So he's a really good worker.
Very prolific.
Yeah. In fact, but like a lot of people thought that Dave was the brains of the operation, even though he was the one running it. Dave didn't know anything about anything about any of how to do any of this stuff, but they still attribute it to him because Robert has low intelligence.
Oh.
So in 1981, Robert hired 4 teenage boys to help him out on the farm, but he didn't pay them. Quote, one day he told me he had a ham for me and I should pick it up after my shift. And so the man said that he was 15 at this time. So he's not paying them in cash at all. He's paying them in meat. Another quote, another kid told me not to take it, but at the end of my shift, I said, what about the ham you promised me? And Willie returned with a mass of material. It wasn't brains, but I don't know what it was. It was stringy and not ham, and it wasn't frozen.
Ugh.
So in the summer of 1981, a teenager who was the son of a local politician is arrested. He was stealing cars for the Picton. Dave was arrested, and again, they assumed that he was running the whole operation because there's no way that Robert could possibly be it because of low intelligence, even though Robert was managing the chop shop and he paid everyone and made sure they stayed on schedule.
Like, he may have not been bright, but he was very smart in what he could do.
And he has an excellent memory, so of course he's going to be able to stay on schedule because they're going to be like, we need this stuff done for this, and he's going to know, okay.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that part.
So, and he paid everyone, so he would know when to pay them on fucking time. Like, he's doing all the work, right? So, not much came of the investigation. Dave was arrested, but never got any sentence. Police were preoccupied at this time trying to find a serial killer who was targeting children. And they later learned that the killer's name was Clifford Robert Olson Jr., who was born January 1st, 1940 in Vancouver.
I remember this name. I don't know where. I think you brought him up at one point.
I haven't spoken about him at all.
No?
No.
I swear Clifford Olson was brought up before.
I don't know. We've talked about another person named Olson before, but not serial killer. But anyways, he's a serial killer, so I'll just kind of go through a bit here. Christine Weller, who was 12, from Surrey, British Columbia, was abducted November 17th, 1980. Her body was found on Christmas Day, a month later. She had been strangled with a belt and stabbed repeatedly. Then on April 16th, 1981, Colleen Marion Dognault, who was 13, vanished, and her body was found 5 months later. On April 22nd, 1981, Darren Todd Johnsrud, who was 16, was abducted and killed, and his body was found less than 2 weeks later. On May 19th, 1981, 16-year-old Sandra Wolfsteiner was murdered, and 13-year-old Ada Anita Court was murdered in June of 1981.
You know what I think of John?
He's rude.
Yeah.
So, Simon Partington, who was 9, was abducted, raped, and strangled on July 2nd, 1981. Judy Cosma, the 14-year-old from New Westminster, was raped and strangled a week later. Her body was discovered on July 25th. The next victim was Raymond King II, 15, abducted on July 23rd, raped, bludgeoned to death. Singren Arndt, an 18-year-old German tourist, was raped and bludgeoned 2 days later. Terry Lynn Carson, 15, raped and strangled on July 27th. Louise Chartrand, age 17, was the last victim identified, and she died on July 30th. He had an extensive criminal history, was arrested on August 12th, 1981, so he literally just went buck wild and killed a whole whack of kids. Then he was arrested on suspicion of abducting 2 girls. By August 25th, he was charged with the murder of Julie Cosma, and then he reached a controversial deal, and he confessed to all 11 murders and showed the RCMP to where some of the bodies that were not recovered yet were. Authorities agreed that $10,000 for each victim was paid in a trust to his wife Joan and their infant son Clifford III. So he gave them confessions and all this stuff for $10,000 per body. His wife received $100,000 for cooperating with the RCMP.
Now, why aren't we doing an episode on him alone?
Because he doesn't have, as much as he has information on him, he doesn't have that much of an actual tale behind him.
Like he's just facts.
Yeah, it was hard to find a lot behind him actually. He pleaded guilty to 11 counts of murder and got as many concurrent life sentences. Served at the super maximum security special handling unit in St. Anne's de Plain, Quebec. And it actually houses most of the country's most dangerous criminals, other than another one that's local. At his sentencing on January 14th, 1982, the trial judge remarked, quote, "My considered opinion is that you should never be granted parole for the remainder of your days. It was foolhardy to let you at large. 1987, Olson was denied parole because in Canada they have rulings that allow you every 25 years to be able to seek parole no matter what, but they can deny you right off the bat. He got this under the Canada's Faint Hope Clause. It allows convicts who had served at least 15 years to be able to go and get faint hope. So,
fucking Canada.
His second parole hearing was on July 18th, 2006, and was also denied. He had made bizarre and false claims, including that the United States had granted him clemency for providing information about the September 11th attacks.
What?
Yeah, he claimed that he knew about the September 11th attacks.
Oh, I totally know what 9/11 is. I mean, I know what happened. I mean, like I was there. Well, I wasn't there, but yeah. I have information.
I heard about this plane going into a building.
Yeah,
you should let me out.
That happened yesterday. I know, but I knew about it before that.
They call this premeditate. Wait, no, not premeditate.
So I saw that plane on TV, and I said that plane's gonna hit that building. So Olson was once again refused parole on November 2010. And then he got even more controversial when federal government benefits from Canada while in prison, the total of $1,169 monthly, could be received by him. And then he was also eligible for the Canadian Old Age Security Pension, which Olson had turned 70 on January 1st, 2010. And he was trying to get that added to his checks. Like, because you get money for being for your commissary, right? He's trying to get this old age pension. The money in question was being held in a trust for Olson. So, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation testified from a federal court standing that a bill terminated his rights to this, but there was also a bill that was put forward by 46,000 petitioners that allowed him to get it, but that was overturned by another petition that said that he shouldn't get it. Prime Minister Stephen Harper asked government officials to look into the issue on January 1st, 2010, and the government moved to terminate Olson's payments, calling the fact that he would be receiving them outrageous and offensive.
Agreed.
So, in September 2010, he sent one of his old age security checks to Sun Media reporter Peter Worthington with a note asking him to forward the check to Harper's campaign for re-election.
The guy trying to stop you from getting paid. That's the guy I want in office.
Yeah. So, in September 2011, they reported that he had terminal cancer, had been transferred to a hospital in Laval, Quebec, and then he died on September 30th, 2011, at the age of 71. He had confessed to 11 murders, to murdering 11 children and young adults between the ages of 9 and 18. And Olson, really fun fact, scored 38 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist.
Would it be psychopathy?
Maybe. But it's basically a checklist that tells you if you're a psychopath, and he scored 38 out of 40. He was almost a perfect score. Like,
he must be so proud.
So back to the Picton brothers, because of this arrest, and luckily the heat was on Olson at the time, so they wouldn't really focus on Dave. The relationship between the brothers gets really, really tense. Dave actually begins publicly and just constantly berating Robert for his terrible hygiene, which was a hypocritical attack because Dave's hygiene was the same. Dave was witnessed losing his temper all the time. He would scream at Robert about his sheets and towels, which hadn't been washed in months. And the trailer that he lived in reeked. But that's the thing, too. He's got drug addicts and prostitutes cleaning his trailer, so I can imagine what the main house looks like. There were some spring floods in the early 1980s that one year covered the whole basement floor of the main house and submerged all of Robert's possessions that were stored down there in filth and mud. The possessions ended up getting covered in mildew and mold, and Dave then fucking turned on his brother about that too. So as the 80s went on, Dave just got more and more into the Hells Angels. He still wasn't allowed in, but he would go riding with them on a Harley just to make everybody think that he's a badass.
Riding bitch?
Pardon? Yeah.
Was he like
riding bitch on the Harley?
yeah.
So, Robert,
they get him in a tank top and everything.
So Robert was never really interested in being a biker, but he did keep doing all the disposal and chop shop work for the Hells Angels. And he hung around with them at Astoria, throwing money around, buying drinks, and he would show up with different paid escorts all the time. So February 14th, 1991.
I was one at this point. Actually, no, I would have been... No, I wasn't one yet.
So relatives of a growing list of missing women in Vancouver advocate for sex workers to establish an annual Valentine's Day remembrance for the women who have gone missing. They hope that it would alert police to be for the need for a tougher investigation on the growing number of missing women. And it did end up happening, a memorial march did end up happening on Vancouver's east side on February 1991. So while this is all happening on, there's speculation that Robert wasn't the only Picton boy who was causing missing women. Dave assaults a woman that is found when he's found inside, fondling her inside of a trailer at a Burnaby construction site. The woman said Picton pinned her to a wall, fondled her, and then the assault only ended because somebody came into the trailer. She later testified, and this is the exact quote: "When Picton went to walk out the door, he turned and he said, 'I'm going to wape you.' He couldn't say the word with an R. He said it twice. He was laughing like crazy. 'I'm going to wape you.'" And again,
what?
Be very, very quiet. "I'm going to wape you."
What? Wape you? What? Wape you?
You should be very scaled. So this woman would also testify that Dave told her to leave town or she'd be chopped into pieces. Quote, "If you take this to court, they're going to cut you up. They're going to cut you up, chop you in so many pieces, they're never going to be found." After he threatened her, she replied that it's ridiculous, that everyone would know it was him. And then he told her, "What does it matter to you? What does it matter to your son if you're already dead?" So he's like, not fucking around.
Ooh.
"Matter to your son."
Yeah, what does
if
it
you're
matter
already
to your son
dead?
If you're already dead. So she reported the assault, but left town before the trial. So in 1992, Dave would be convicted of the assault without the testimony, and he was fined $1,000 and sentenced to 1 year of probation. So far, Dave has basically killed a kid and threatened to rape and kill another woman, and he's only gotten probation.
Yeah, he's getting off pretty easy.
Yeah,
especially considering they're considering the brains of the operation.
Yeah. So in 1984, they sell off a big portion of the north end of their farm, which nets them $2 million. So in 1963, which was back when they had bought the property, it was $18,000, 40 acres. And now they're only selling a couple acres for $2 million because that's how big of an explosion the market had in Vancouver. So today there's actually properties in that area, right around where their area of the farm was, that can go as high as $6 or $7 million for an acre.
Jesus.
The Picton family would remain on their portion of the giant property in a giant junkyard and pig farm in the middle of the now growing affluent neighborhood, and neighbors would complain about the noises and the smells. So in 1985, there was a sudden increase in numbers of missing women on the east side, and that went all the way to 1987. For 2 years, 21 women vanished. Robert, at this time, mounts a horse head on his bedroom wall. He'd bought a Palomino a bunch of years before and loved it the same way he loved that calf. And then when it broke its leg and had to be put down, instead of burying it, Robert cuts its head off, took the head to a taxidermist, and mounted the head on the bedroom wall.
I love you. You never leave me now.
Perfect forever.
So, 1996, Robert is now 46 years old and Dave is 45. They both have a ton of money from the sale of their farm, like the acres of their farm, so they decide to reinvest and open up a nightclub. The nightclub caters to their biker buddies and to prostitutes, and they call it, and I'm not kidding here, Piggy's Palace Good Time Society.
Is this the basis for the movie Porky's?
When did Porky's come out? This is 1996.
It might have been in early 80s, late 80s. I don't know.
So, Piggy's Palace was not some kind of sex club, even though there was a lot of prostitutes there. And I shouldn't be saying prostitutes; they're called sex workers now, but they're prostitutes.
Well, back in the 80s,
Well, this is the 90s.
Yeah.
Porky's came out in 1981.
Yeah.
So it might have been their inspiration.
Yeah. So, you ever hear about that movie?
Porky's?
Oh, God. So Dave set up the business as a nonprofit. I love it. He sets up a fucking biker's bar for a fucking nonprofit and says that he intended to donate all the proceeds of events to charities. But he didn't do that. It would function as a popular event space and got a lot of use, actually. The Long Tin Shed at 2552 Burns Road was visited by almost everyone in Port Coquitlam.
Oh, yeah. Fuck, I forgot about that place.
So 2 mayors, several city council members, a lot of local business and civic leaders, like hockey events, parents who are just doing functions for elementary schools, high schools. They all come there and have like their dances, concerts, all of this at Piggy's Palace.
Is it still going?
Yeah.
So, and most of the events took place during the day, but then at night it drew the biker bars in, like the bikers in. So the space was used to host massive drunken raves by rotating artists.
Yep. And
as many as 2,000 people would be packed into Piggy's Palace. Quote by some unnamed woman in one of these sources: "I only went once and I'd never go again. It was very raunchy crowd, lots of cocaine, lots of really, really badass people. I do not want to be a part of it."
Why did she say badass?
That's an ice thing.
That almost sounds like you respect them.
Yeah. So Robert soon realized that he could bring sex workers back to these big parties, and then it would be just a quick little walk over to his trailer. So they'd sneak off to the trailer, have sex, and that sex was getting rougher and rougher. So he was getting more and more into BDSM, and he was very much a sadist. And he didn't care much about consent or what the safe word was. And after he was done, he would say that it made him feel powerful, and it gave him the rush that he kept wanting to experience. So on March 23rd, 1997, Robert goes cruising down the streets of Vancouver, and he meets a woman named Wendy, offers her $100 Canadian to come back to the farm. She agrees, and the two go back to his trailer. They have sex. Wendy heads to the bathroom to shoot up. So she a drug addict.
Really?
Yeah. When she returns, he handcuffs her. She manages to wiggle out of his grasp before he can handcuff do the other handcuff, and runs out of the room. He pisses him off a lot. So then he pulls a knife and a knife fight. A knife fight.
Is Dave reading this?
I know. And the ensuing struggle gets them both very badly stabbed. She manages to return a lot of the blows, including cutting him in the throat.
In that knife fight.
Yeah. So, bleeding from multiple wounds on her own and wearing literally like no clothes, she runs out of the trailer, makes it to the road, and an elderly couple bring her to the hospital. Unknown to her, Robert is at the hospital.
Oh, no.
He is there to get treated.
Really? He survived the knife fight?
Yeah. Wendy almost dies. She lost 3 liters of blood, and just to put it into perspective, an average human has about 5.6 liters of blood in them. So she lost 3 liters, and she is a small woman and a drug addict, so I have a feeling she has a lot less blood than that in her.
Or at least it's very thin.
Yeah. And she had just shot up in the bathroom, so...
Yeah.
That was impressive that she could keep up with him in the knife fight.
So she lost more than half her blood. So she still had Robert's handcuffs on her wrist. The police get her story and decide to go pay Robert a visit in the hospital. And they find the key to the handcuff, with his belongings. So he still had the fucking key in his pocket. Like, bud.
What if I caught up with her? They're really nice handcuffs.
Yeah, I need them back. So
how am I going to get the fuzzy fur ones again?
Yeah. So police immediately arrest him, and Robert tells them that Wendy had tried to rob him for $3,500 in cash that he had on him, and slashed him up when he resisted.
She attacked me with a knife.
It was a really bad knife fight.
I didn't have a knife. I just fifed her.
Yeah.
Foffed her.
Yeah. So they don't believe him at all and charge him with attempted murder and forcible confinement. His trial is scheduled for January of the following year. He bonds out and is released from police custody. And while he waits, he really ramps up his activities. August 1997, he heads down to Vancouver's east side again, goes to Low Track, and he runs into 24-year-old Marnie Frey. He offers her drugs in exchange for sex. She agrees. She gets in the truck and is never seen again. So he then, on January 1998, catches a really lucky break. Wendy, the survivor of the stabbing, was too terrified to testify against him and never showed up to any of the initial hearings. So the whole thing's dismissed.
Oh. Poor lady.
He's now free to do as he pleases. There's another spike of women disappearing from Vancouver. 9 more go missing in 1998. And they don't think they have a serial killer on their hands yet. They were used to sex workers disappearing. They could be here one day, gone the next, and sometimes be gone for months and show up years later. Mm-hmm. They're prostitutes, unfortunately. Sex workers don't have a very good track record of being reliable.
Yeah, not to mention there'd be the association for them to be low humans type of thing.
So while more women are going missing than normal, there's no corresponding spike in dead bodies turning up. So again, these women could just be living new lives. No warnings put out. Local sex workers are not giving each other a heads up, as many of them are just disappearing.
But you can't really warn somebody if you're gone.
Yeah.
Where do the tales come from if there's no survivors type of scenario?
So in September of 1998, they do something, though. They set up a team to review the files of 40 women going back to 1971. And after reviewing those cases, they rule out any killer. These women are just vanishing on their own. July 27th, 1998. According to a summary of police log, Lisa Yeld's brother, Bill, calls into authorities and provides information that Robert Picton bragged to Lisa about being able to dispose of bodies, grind them up for feed for his pigs. And Bill said that Lisa, who had been in Picton's trailer, had seen women's identification and clothing. The police don't investigate it. The reason is because there's still no bodies. They don't think there's a killer in the midst because there's not a spike in dead bodies turning up. And while they're suspicious, this random tip is coming basically out of hearsay without anything to back it up.
Mm.
Bill then told them that Lisa told her that Picton had a bunch of syringes and that he would use windshield washer fluid to inject it into their, like, into some systems, like some women's systems, to get rid of them. So they go in, after he's been arrested, the syringes full of windshield wiper fluid are found and covered in human DNA. And the police sadly cut off contact with Bill and don't do any further investigations because Bill had been providing them with information that would be really accurate, but was also struggling with drug addiction and had become completely infatuated with one of the female officers and was creeping her the fuck out.
Oh,
I just can't imagine. Like, so December 31st, 1998, soon after Piggy Palace is opened up, they find themselves in court. They're sued by Port Coquitlam officials for allegedly violating city zone ordinances. According to the complaint, their property was zoned for agricultural use, and they had altered a large farm building on the land for the purpose of holding dances, concerts, and other recreations. Following a New Year's Eve party on December 31st, 1998, where Doug and the Slugs, a popular Vancouver band, played, the Pictons were slapped with an injunction banning any future parties. Now, there's only a couple sources, but one that was reliable that I found that actually mentioned the band's name. And I'm actually, like, really surprised that I even know one of their songs.
Oh.
So, they're a popular Canadian group that was formed in Vancouver in 1977. And they did enjoy some hits with Too Bad, Who Knows How to Make Love Stay, Making It Work, and Tomcat Prowl. And Sagriff, I'm going to give you a YouTube link. Please insert the YouTube link at this exact moment because we're all going to play it here. And you guys are going to know that song.
5, 4.
You know this song?
Yeah. It sounds very familiar.
Oh, I'm out of control. Red lights cruising. I got no sense of soul. I knew you.
It does sound like killing music.
I know.
Gonna chop you up, making it work. Gonna keep.
Like you escape and you have to adapt to the situation, making it work.
Yeah. He's chasing her out of the trailer, making it work.
He's just singing it out loud, making it
work.
He's not that far behind. I think I'm hearing him singing that stupid song again.
Making it.
Here he comes.
Help! Making it work.
Yeah. So also,
gonna slaughter my sex worker, making it work.
So also, Too Bad, like one of their other hits, was used as the theme song for the Norm Show featuring Norm Macdonald.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the court order noted that police would be authorized to arrest and remove any person attending any public events at the farms from here on out. So that's the end of that. On January 16th, which is Sup's birthday, 1999, Jacqueline Mcdonald, who just turned 22, is reported missing in Vancouver. So many women have gone missing, and more locals are starting to think that they're not just leaving town. So,
these aren't sex workers. Maybe it is more than we think.
So Elaine Allen is worked at a drop-in center for sex workers called Wish, and had provided resources for women living in the Vancouver streets. And she would work with 20 of the women that would later go missing, like 20 of the women that had gone missing. So she's noticing that these women are missing at a very startling rate as well. She keeps contacting the police more and more often and voicing her concerns, and they're brushing her aside. And they told her that missing women like Jacqueline will probably be fine. They're just probably somewhere else restarting their lives. So he's still not on law enforcement radar, even though he is known to frequent these women, like he knows them. And he isn't talked about much amongst local sex workers as being a guy to stay away from. In fact, they keep telling him, they keep encouraging people to go with him because he still pays very well, even though he likes it very rough. Lynn Ellington struggled with an addiction to crack, and she was so not worried about Robert that she lived on the Picton farm for a while in early 1999. Robert would buy her everything: cigarettes, booze, drugs, even groceries.
What kind of drugs?
I'm guessing crack.
Oh!
So...
A Novocaine?
Not Novocaine. So he even got her set up with government benefits. So he's just taking care of her. So she's 29 years old, and she's pretty outgoing, and Lynn actually becomes very suspicious of Robert. She'd heard some troubling rumors from Dave. She'd later recall, quote, "How I approached him was I said, 'Dave, I've been hearing a lot of rumors around here.' And he said, 'What kind of rumors?' 'What kind of rumors?'
What kind of rumors?
So, and I said, 'Well, I heard that there were arms and legs in the freezer.' And Dave replied, 'Sure, let's go in the trailer and talk.'"
Sure. Let's go in the trailer and talk.
Yeah. So they went inside, and Dave then slammed her against the wall and slapped her in the face. She ran down the hall to her room, tried to close the door, and Dave just busted it open. She grabbed a vase that she had in the room and broke the window, and that kind of ended this whole episode. But later, when she saw Robert told her that Dave wanted her gone. He said she should stay inside the trailer when Dave was out. When Dave was out and about. So Lynn is actually still there, and she accounts for another incident. And this is the incident as she tells it. After Lynn had helped Robert recruit some young women to go back to his place for drugs, Lynn left him to have sex with the new woman, and she smoked some crack in the living room. She then passes out. She was startled awake by a scream outside of the trailer as she saw a light coming from the slaughterhouse and went to investigate it. As soon as she got to the barn, she noticed a really awful smell. She kept moving towards the front door and pushed it open. And that's when she saw someone's legs dangling from the ceiling. She saw Robert in the process of hanging something on a meat hook. And this was the skinned body of Georgina Papin, who was recruited. Georgina was the mother of 7, and she was now hanging in the fucking thing like one of the slaughtered animals.
I'm more surprised that she could smell something distinctive.
Yeah. So she sees this in front of her and she screams. And then all of a sudden, Robert is beside her and pulls her over to the meat cutting table. And he forced her to look at the body. And she starts to try and vomit, but she has nothing in her body, in her body except for bile. She was eye level with Georgina's legs and noticed the paint, like the toes that were painted red with actual polish. So they're not like red with blood. She can notice the nail polish on these fucking legs. And there was hair and all sorts of just viscera all over the table. And then she notices the knives. And then she sees a bucket where he discarded anything that he discarded from the corpse is going right into there. And that's when Robert says, it's okay. She's just like a pig anyways. It's all right. It's going to be all right. So then he starts to pull out Georgina's entrails. And then he sliced some more and she saw some blood squirt. He continues to butcher it while Lynn is standing right there. And then he turns to her and says, you say a word to anybody, do anything, you'll be right beside her.
Oh.
So Lynn didn't go and do anything. She said that she told him, no, I won't. I won't say a word. All I want is my dope and my booze. And she didn't say anything about it for years. She kept living on the farm. And honestly, why wouldn't she? Because if he could do that, and there's been a lot of investigation against these brothers, and nothing ever comes of it. Think about if she ratted him out, and he knows about it, and then he gets off, and now he's free.
Yeah, in a weird way, her position is the most dangerous and safest place.
Yeah,
all at the same time.
Because if he wanted her dead, he could have just done it right then.
Yeah,
yeah.
So in February 1999. Robert meets Brenda Wolfe. She came back. She had come back to the farm and to trade sex for drugs. It's believed that he handcuffed her during sex, then strangled her with a belt or wire. They don't know the actual method, but they suspect that this was actually a really normal thing for Robert. It was pretty well what he always did, and then he would always butcher the corpse. He would drag the body to his private workshop and then start slicing their meat into cuts and getting rid of the rest. So, and it is super, super, super possible that he sold their meat locally, mixing it with the pork. And it definitely took a lot of the locals. He definitely took a lot to the local waste site where he would get those body parts from pigs and butchered animals turned into like hot dogs and stuff. So the number of women missing keeps spiking. Brenda was the 53rd woman to disappear in the area in the recent years. So although Robert wasn't a smart guy, he was smart enough to understand that he would need to change how he was getting these women, because he's noticing that they're starting to become reluctant to come talk to him. So now he starts getting all these, any female acquaintance of his to bring new people to him. So, in 1989, he was working with a woman named Dina Taylor. She was in her late 20s and had a very big criminal record, mostly for drug trafficking. She had lived in the East Side neighborhoods since childhood, and she basically lived at the Roosevelt Hotel. And so then she started staying at the farm for days and weeks at a time, which was part of the trade for why she was bringing women to Robert. They would go to shelters like Wish and find people who were struggling with addiction, and then they would bring those people to parties with a man named Uncle Willie. And Dina would talk up Uncle Willie and about how he was awesome, he was really rich, he had lots of drugs, lots of booze, and he was really free of giving it. She'd walk out of the shelter with whoever was really, really into it, and then Robert would rape, murder, and butcher them. So, January 2001, the number of missing women has grown to 62. And the general public is noticing. It's actually being covered in the press more, and there's a big public outcry. The Vancouver Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police launch an initiative called the Missing Women's Task Force. And immediately the tips start to come in. There's 1,200 calls within the first couple days. And there's lost calls about somebody named Uncle Willie, but nobody really gets too far into it. The police do come and look at Picton, but he's just a one name on a very long list. And again, because they feel he's very idiotic and low intelligence, they're not really looking at him. And there's also no bodies. With no bodies, there's no DNA, there's no records, there's nothing to go on. So there's just no evidence to really come and narrow this list down or really bring him to light. March 2001, Patricia Johnson is seen. The following month, Heather Bottomley is reported missing. June of 2001, 51-year-old Robert Picton picks up Andrea Josbury, and then he kills her. A few months later, he murders Serena Abbotsway, and she's reported missing in August. So it took a bunch of months for her to be reported. The last two women's bodies were butchered, but he put Serena and Andrea's hands, head, and feet into the freezers with the other meat. So he stores them in plastic buckets and places the buckets in the slaughterhouse meat freezer. So September of 2001, the Vancouver police and the Mounties have another task force, and they're still looking for the women, trying to figure out what happened to them. And they call it Project Evenhanded. And it doesn't work. There's still women disappearing. And that October, Diane Rock is reported missing. In November, Mona Wilson vanishes. And Uncle Willie gets real sloppy with that last one. He, basically, Mona Wilson is approached by Robert on one day in November. He promises her drug and alcohol. And she goes back to his trailer with him. He takes her to a camper van, which is quite a ways away from the barn on the farm. They have sex, and he attacks her in this camper van. And then, instead of using his usual method of strangling, he beats her down, then shoots her with a .22 revolver, and in the process covers the entire van in blood. Like, it's just an explosion.
Kind of like in TV and movies when the blood splatters on the window.
Oh, yeah. And he doesn't clean any of it. He just walks out and leaves it all over the fucking place.
Honestly, sounds like he just wanted to be caught at that point.
In December of 2001, the task force investigators go down to Seattle and interview future subject Gary Ridgway, who will be charged with 49 murders in the Green River area of the Washington state. He doesn't give them any useful information. And by the end of 2001, 64 Vancouver women are now listed as missing. And another name will be added in January 2002. So February 1st, 2002, the police get a break from a confidential tip. A truck driver who had worked on the farm on and off over the years said that he had seen illegal weapons in Robert's trailer. So the officers are able to get a search warrant now. So on February 5th, they show up, and the Royal Mounted the RCMP, accompanied by the task force members, enter the property. They have a warrant. They head on in, and they find an inhaler that is determined to belong to Serena Abbotsway. So they are now starting to uncover even more evidence that lead them to other women, because there's literally evidence everywhere all over these trailers, like all over this trailer, because he had ID and all this kind of stuff, like even the inhaler. So they arrest him and put him in the jail for the night. And they found personal items belonging to all these women, clothing, ID, other items, substantial portions of them soaked in blood. And within 24 hours, journalists and reporters are literally just everywhere on the farm. Like, it just spreads like wildfire. So they keep investigating the farm, and it becomes the largest forensic investigation in Canadian history. On February 6, 2002, the following day after they arrested him, they have a new warrant to look for clues about the disappearance of the women, and they start tearing apart the slaughterhouse. And nestled in an industrial-grade pig farm junkyard is they find the camper trailer, and that's where the mattress that's soaked in blood, like what Mona Wilson's blood is, and her blood was found on the walls, cupboards, and all over the kitchen. Some of her remains, like her head, were even found in a garbage can just outside the trailer. And he's in custody, and he knows he's about to be charged with what they're going to find. And Robert doesn't seem fazed. He's grilled for 11 hours in an interrogation room, and he never gets agitated. Just stays so laid back, and he just denies everything they toss at him.
Denies. We have more evidence than we've ever had with any other person.
Don't know what you're talking about. And he even kicks up his feet on a chair, smirks, and the interrogators later talk about how he just seemed to be enjoying this. They're giving him all the attention he wants.
Jesus.
God, killing her in the truck and leaving her, almost like he's showing his own power.
I know.
Yeah.
Jesus.
February 7th, Robert is charged with possession of a lethal weapon to keep him in custody. They keep searching the property, and they keep building more and more evidence. And they're trying to get a confession out of him, and because he seems like the type to brag about his crimes. So they put an undercover agent in Picton's cell, and he quickly tells this guy, while eating a meal, that he killed 49 women, and his goal was 50. He actually said that his only regret is that he didn't get a round number. And while you can't really take that at his words, the way he was doing this, it's got to be crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, he wanted to get to 50?
Yeah.
But there were 64 missing?
Yeah, so he wasn't responsible for all
65.
of them. He's not responsible for all of them. So Robert tells the undercover agent that he used the processing plant as a dump site and admitted that he got really sloppy with Mona. In the video, he is actually just cleaning that plate while talking so nonchalantly about these murders. No remorse at all. Just going.
Yeah.
So, the February 22nd, 2002, he's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the killings of Serena Abbotsway and Mona Wilson. They keep looking for more evidence. They're digging holes all over the farm, searching the freezers, and that's when they find the heads, hands, and feet of Serena and Andrea, which is how they... so now they've added Andrea to it. They find thousands of pieces of evidence, including a wood chipper that showed signs of being used to run corpses through them, which he would use to ground it up and then feed to the pigs. Because April 2nd, 2002, they find enough evidence to add the murders of Diane Rock, Jacqueline Mcdonald, and Heather Bottomley. April 9th, they finally add Andrea Joesbury to it. His story is everywhere in Canada and the United States. And he's known as the pig farmer killer, the butcher of Vancouver. So, May 22nd, they then add Brenda Wolfe to his charges. So they're just finding all of this, all this evidence everywhere.
Yeah.
September 19th, 2002, Marcy Creason, the father of Marcy Creason, files a lawsuit against the police, the city of Vancouver, the province of British Columbia, and the federal government for not doing more to keep his daughter safe. Robert Picton is also charged with 4 more murders on that exact same day for Georgina Papin, Helen Hallmark, Patricia Johnson, and Jennifer Firminger.
Jesus.
And then 2 weeks later, on October 2nd, he's then charged with the murders of Heather Chinook, Tanya Hollick, Sherry Irving, Inga Hall, And then January 13th, 2003, there's a preliminary hearing in Port Coquitlam, and it concludes on July 21st. Literally, like, almost 7 months later. Like, July 23rd, he is declared competent to stand trial. And he orders the trial Judge David Stone orders the trial to move forward with 15 counts of first-degree murder. November 18th, investigators wrap up the entire thing. They're done excavating the entire property. The excavation lasted 21 months, and it cost the Canadian government $70 million.
Jesus.
Just to excavate his entire...
And find all these victims. And they haven't even found all his victims, according to him. So, on March 10th, Canada Health brings out the report that Port Coquitlam area can't be ruled out of the possibility that human remains may have made their way into some of the Picton's products that were sold to local customers. This is meat that was sold for human consumption, meat that was consumed by people. Canada Health's official statement is cross-contamination could mean that human remains did get into or contaminate some of the pork meat that was produced. And Picton had been slaughtering pigs and people for a lot of years, and he'd been selling a lot of meat to different people. And think about that guy that he paid in meat with the ham, that the guy said it wasn't ham, it wasn't brain.
Was kind of stringy.
Yeah. So people are super pissed. Like, super pissed. And they want the trial to begin immediately. Something that's even more fucked up is Marnie Frey, who was one of his victims. Her family was reported to have been given a lot of meat from the Picton farm. And her mother said that she and her family had eaten that meat, and a lot of that meat. There's a really big chance that he fed them Marnie. That's just gross.
What happened to the woman who caught him? Did she end up dying?
No,
too?
she was still alive. She comes forward with that story years during the trial.
Mm.
May 25th, 2005. So he's been caught in 2002, and now we're in 2005. He faces 12 more first-degree charges, and they're still putting it all together on him. They still have all this evidence to go through, even though the excavation's over. His trial's about to begin, and it's moved to New Westminster, but it's hard to escape the press coverage for this because it's all over the place. In October 2005, the pre-trial hearings are over, and he's now tried for 27 first-degree murders. But that eventually gets turned down in 2006 because the investigator and prosecution teams feel that not all of their cases are super strong. So they pick 6 victims that they have the most evidence on. And Justice James Williams explained to all in attendance of the trial with the victims' families there that he's divided by complicating the case into 2 trials. So he's going to do the first 6 to make sure that he gets convicted, and then once he's been convicted, it makes it stronger for them to be able to proceed with the next case with all the weaker cases.
Mm.
Okay.
So he put a block on Judge Williams put a block on how many details the media could circulate. December 12th, 2006, the jury is picked for his first trial. And they were warned that they could be sitting there for a year or more because there's that much evidence to go through.
Jesus Christ.
So with the jury selected, the first trial begins. Picton pleads not guilty to all 6 counts of murder. And there are victims in attendance, and they describe his face as feeling like as he was smirking, like as he's saying not guilty. So...
Not guilty.
Yeah. So the prosecution shows the jury the mountain of evidence. There's crime scene photographs, blood spatter analysis, DNA evidence, pieces of body parts, plenty of the victim's belongings everywhere. Serena's inhaler, several lipsticks, a jacket. There was items that he had used to attack the women with, night vision goggles and shackles. I have a feeling this sick fuck was hunting them in the woods.
Ooh,
like that's what the night vision goggles would have. That's the only thing I can think of. There was buckets full of heads and hands, just tons of evidence. Picton's lawyer tried to show him as a simpleton. He's got no intelligence. He couldn't possibly be responsible for all this because he's not the ringleader. That he's just a simple farmer. And they start to point at Lynn Ellington, Dina Taylor, and Dave. And Lynn is the woman that caught him in the slaughterhouse. And his defense lawyer tries to say that those three are the ringleaders. They're the ones who really did all this, and he was just there to butcher them up afterwards. So they don't buy it. And the prosecutor's star witness was a man who lived on the farm for several weeks back in 1999, called Andrew Bellwood. He testified in great detail that Robert had put on a strange performance for him at one night at his trailer. That Robert had had mimed strangling sex workers, complete with a piece of wire.
Oof. Yeah.
So they're horrified by the description, and everything concludes on November 26, 2007. They deliberate for 2 weeks, and on December 8th, 2007, they come back with a verdict, and Robert is found not guilty of all 6 counts of first-degree murder.
What?
They find him guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder.
Oh.
I think this is first degree. This is fucking premeditated. He fucking had this. But first degree is killing with premeditation, willful, planned, and deliberate. And second degree is murder with a deliberate killing that occurs with no planning, so no premeditation. They felt that because he didn't always kill the prostitutes that he brought there, and he actually didn't kill most of them, they felt that he was just acting impulsively. But to me, I feel that it was more he was acting on the impulse to not kill the people he brought. Because he knew in his own mind that if he just killed everyone that came there, people were going to be like, we don't want to go with him anymore.
Honestly, I would almost argue that he picked and choose, just like because he was very specific when Lynn found the mother there.
Yeah.
He was very specific. Don't worry. She's just another pig.
Yeah.
But it was a very specific person.
Yeah.
There was something very unique about her. So I think he picked and chose specific stories that he liked.
I also think that he probably looked for any commonalities to his, because he probably really doesn't like his sister, and he probably is haunted by his mother. So any similarities bared by those two in any woman that he could relate, I feel that probably goes in there as well.
Yeah.
So he is, so the minimum sentence is, life in prison without the possibility of parole for 10 years, or the maximum sentence is life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. And so, they end up sentencing him to the maximum, and 2 months later, he begins to have some appeals. July 30th, 2010, the Supreme Court of Canada rejects Robert's appeal for a new trial. And the Crown attorneys say that they're not going to pursue the remaining murder charges because it's to spare the families and the court system effort and expense, and probably to spare the families having to relive this.
Yeah.
They confirmed the decision on August 4th. And so there's no more murder charges down, but he's probably never getting the fuck out because, he's just dangerous.
Yeah.
December 12th, 2012, Vancouver Police Chief Chim Chu offers an apology for all the mistakes made in the missing women's cases. It's been over 10 years since his arrest. So this is 2012. It's literally been a decade. Quote, on behalf of the Vancouver Police Department, I would again like to say we are sorry to the families and friends of the missing and murdered women. We could have and should have caught Picton sooner. End quote. In response to all this, there's accusations of a systematic bias in the force because of the fact that these missing women were not even just sex workers, but some of them were Indigenous. So, even further down. Quote, there's a very dramatic change in the way we view missing persons when they're marginalized people. In terms of recognizing the fact they are marginalized makes them a very high risk for violence. End quote. So, where's Robert Picton now? Well, he is being held in a maximum security Kent institution, which is 120 kilometers from Vancouver. And the dude is currently 71 years old. He can apply for parole on February 22nd, 2024. And that's only for like day parole. So like he can be allowed out during the day. He can apply for the full parole on February 22nd, 2027 when he's 77. But I highly doubt they'll ever let him out. And Dave, well, he said that he said that he had no idea what his brother was up to, that it was not part of his deal. The pig farm was all of Robert's responsibility. He wouldn't have seen any of the women killed, wouldn't have come across any of the remains. And law enforcement think that he's completely full of shit because he lived on this fucking farm.
Not to mention that story where he tried to kill Lynn.
Yeah. So the Picton farm is currently a grass field. It has some cows and it's next to a golf course. And Dave still pretty well owns it. And if he keeps selling it off, he'll keep getting money. So, yeah.
I'm curious, where's the sister?
She probably doesn't have anything at all to do with any of this.
No, obviously, but where is she?
Who knows?
God damn it!
I know. So,
she was the cool one.
Yeah, she's the most normal out of both of them. So, the thing, though, that comes up with this, though, is, like, the fact that, first of all, there's a whole conspiracy behind this, that Robert Picton is an Illuminati leader, and that he was feeding these bodies to the Hells Angels because they're cannibalistic, which is just outrageous. Like,
you know, it's funny because recently I've been hearing a lot about conspiracies, but one of the things that keeps being brought up that like makes so much sense is the problem with a conspiracy is the amount of people it takes to keep it silent is the very reason why it couldn't work.
Yeah.
Like that many people, like human nature is so, there's so many ways of it like accidentally escaping or like you saying it by accident that it's impossible for it not to eventually get out.
Yeah.
You'd have to be a one-man conspiracy. Yeah. And that's virtually impossible.
I have to agree on that one. It's just, and like, honestly, it's just too much. And plus with how, like, they talk about his simple intelligence, and I can't see him being the ringleader of all of this. And so that's where I find conspiracy theories get so lost because like they'll support anything that they feel is part of the conspiracy theory by just throwing out the logic of it. Like,
yeah. I mean, the guy, it says here that he actually like wrote a book and that a new law had to be passed in 2016 that specifies that no one will take advantage of like of this tragedies in Canada. Where's the quote here? Prevent criminal profits from such books.
Yeah. There's that law had to get passed in the States by another topic that I'll eventually have, because there was a guy who was a cannibal and he managed to get out through a technicality, and so they basically he wrote books about his crimes, and so they had to pass a law in New York or something like that you couldn't get like profits from it because of this one guy. It seems that there's a lot of that.
That wasn't Alfred Packer, was it?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. Because Alfred Packer is the basis for Trey Parker's first film, Cannibal Dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, that happens in, like, almost every country and eventually has to pass that law. And I find it weird that they don't just have it in almost every country already. Like, every modern country, I guess. Like,
yeah.
Well, you think people would have, like, some, like, moral sense of, like, oh, I shouldn't really be, like, trying to justify the killer in this. But
yeah. There are some states, though, in the States that if somebody puts out a book or is like sells movie rights and stuff like that, that the prisoner doesn't get any of that profit. It goes to like a victims fund.
Oh, so the point is not just that it can't be made; it's that it can't be given to the
apparently in this, Robert Pickman himself wrote this book with 144 pages of information, and this guy in California received all of this, made a complete book out of it, sold it to Amazon for $20 on Amazon, and a petition online is the reason why these new laws had to be passed, that absolutely no one can profit off of Canadian crime.
Wow. That's weird.
Wow, that's actually really interesting, but that would actually make a lot of sense why you don't see too many movies centered in Canada's history of serial killers and stuff.
Yeah,
like
why
that.
we haven't seen a movie based on Robert Picton or like.
Yeah.
Well, there was apparently one in development. It was called the working title was Full Flood Begun production in Vancouver. It was based on the Stephen Cameron book On the Farm.
I'm guessing that's the guy who probably wrote the book or something.
Yeah,
probably who wrote Picton's book.
Yeah. So he sold the movie rights of the book to somebody, but that's where the issue lies, is that
you can't do anything with it now.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, and you can't make a movie based on it because nobody can profit from it. So
that's really interesting. And in a way, it
makes sense, but it kind of doesn't, because like we're trying to hide like the crimes.
The fear is like also glorifying.
Yeah,
it'll profit. Yeah.
And then you have shows like this where I fucking talk about dark subjects all the fucking time. And
I wonder, like, where ours, like, are we an exception, or if we had any sort of fame, would we be?
No, we're not really profiting off of the crime. We're profiting off of the research that we do or something like that. So it's not like we're getting.
So it's just news.
Yeah, we're just using what's already out there in the media.
Yeah, it's not like we're actually interviewing Robert
Picton.
Yeah, without a journalism
thing
under us.
And I bet you that's where the movie kind of fell into like gray waters as well, where they were trying to be like, well, we can make this movie because we're not the ones who did the interview. We just bought them. But then the court's probably going to be like, yeah, but you bought information that was obtained illegally. Like,
yeah. Well, that was a grueling episode.
2.5 hours.
Jesus, Dick Christ. I think that might have been we stretch. You might need to cut a couple things down next time.
Yeah. But it's all fucking crazy. Like,
yeah.
This is only like the tip of the iceberg, though. Like, if you read like more of this, it's like Picton letters. Fucking
Yeah.
I love he's like, oh man, you got me. Now
Yeah.
he's like researching as we talk.
Well, the problem is
You're ruining the concept of our show.
Well, the problem is that, like, when I'm doing a lot of the research, I have to put it together in the most, like, entertaining way. So I do have to cut things out and, like, add, like, if I find other information, add things in. That's why I added Doug and the Slugs, because I felt that was a really nice little segue, because I'm like, such a random fact that a Canadian band playing at a New Year's festival got this Piggy Palace shut down. Like,
do you think the band still talks about it? Like, remember that time we played at like that creepy farm place?
The lead singer is actually dead now, though. He died in like 2010 or something. But can you just imagine that they're like, well, we shut down Robert Picton. Woo!
They probably avoid talking about it publicly just for the sake of bad press, even if they got it shut it down. Making it work. All right. Well, that was our show. Thank you, Sup, for being part of this thing. We enjoyed your presence, and your picture on the computer has gotten more ominous. I guess, you know, just as the story got darker, so did you. But that's our show. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Comment. Like, comment, subscribe, rate and review, all the jazz.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, make sure the notification thing's gone.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. Or you can follow us on Facebook at Chaos Jar Podcast, which is also the name of our YouTube channel. Not to mention, you can be a patron at patreon.com/Chaos Jar. Give us some dough, because we want mo. And, you know, all this in the show notes and more, including my Twitter account, which is, I'm glad you asked _ All right, that's our show. Have a good night.
All right.
Done recording? Is it?
Yeah, we're done recording.
Oh, okay.